Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. What would you do if on the happiest day of your life, you discovered that everything you thought you knew was a lie? What if the person you loved the most had been hiding a secret that could shatter your world in an instant? This is a story that begins with a question and a wedding, but it's not your typical love story. It's a tale of deception, betrayal, and tragic consequences. The day was supposed to be perfect, a celebration of love between two souls bound together in marriage. The air was filled with laughter, and the warmth of family and friends gathered around to witness the union of David Carter and Rachel Evans. David, a man of integrity, success, and deep love for his bride, stood proudly at the altar. Rachel, a vision of beauty and grace, stood by his side, admired by everyone. They seemed to be the perfect couple, the epitome of happiness and love. The wedding took place in Brooklyn, New York, and it was enriched with cultural traditions that made the day even more special. It was a wedding that many would remember as the ultimate celebration of love and togetherness. But beneath the surface of this beautiful union, something darker was brewing. Secrets hidden in the shadows were waiting to be uncovered. Secrets that could destroy the very foundation of this marriage. Rachel Evans didn't grow up in luxury. She came from a modest neighborhood in Harlem, where making ends meet was a daily struggle. From a young age, she knew that love alone couldn't fill an empty stomach or provide a roof over her head. This harsh reality shaped Rachel's ambitions and planted a relentless desire to escape her circumstances. She was determined to carve out a life of comfort and security, one where she would never again have to worry about money. So when she met David Carter, it wasn't love at first sight. It was calculation. David was everything she had dreamed of. He was successful, respected, and wealthy, a man who could offer her the life she had always wanted. Rachel saw him not just as a partner, but as a provider, someone who could shield her from the uncertainties of life. She set her sights on him, knowing that if she played her cards right, she could secure her future. Rachel's relationship with David seemed almost like destiny, a chance encounter that quickly blossomed into something more. But for her, it was never just about love or attraction. While David was handsome and kind, what mattered more to Rachel was the stability he could provide. She played her role perfectly, always saying the right things, always presenting herself as the perfect woman for him. To David, she was everything he had ever wanted, beautiful, supportive, and seemingly as in love with him as he was with her. But Rachel was always calculating. Every decision she made was designed to bring her closer to the life she dreamed of. She played the part of the loving fiancé, all the while ensuring that her plan stayed on track. While David seemed like the perfect choice for her future, Rachel's life took an unexpected turn when she met Chris Carter, David's younger brother. Chris was different from David in almost every way. He was charming, free-spirited, and still finding his path in life. He didn't have the wealth or the stability that Rachel craved, but there was something about him, something that drew her in. Their first meeting was nothing like her calculated encounter with David. It was spontaneous, electric, and led to an affair that would change everything. Chris, with his boyish energy and charm, was irresistible to Rachel. He offered her something David couldn't, an escape from the carefully constructed life she was building. To Rachel, Chris wasn't a future prospect. He was a distraction, a thrilling secret that made her feel alive in a way that her relationship with David didn't. Their affair began with stolen kisses and whispered conversations, hidden in the shadows where no one could see. But as time passed, their connection grew stronger, and it became harder to keep the affair hidden. Chris was infatuated with Rachel, captivated by her beauty and the way she seemed to understand him. But for Rachel, the affair was about control. She knew she could manipulate Chris, keeping him close enough to ensure he stayed quiet, but never allowing him to threaten the future she was building with David. She used her charm and vulnerability to maintain power over him, ensuring that he would never reveal the truth. As the wedding day approached, Rachel's plans began to solidify. But then, something unexpected happened. She discovered she was pregnant. The child she carried wasn't David's. It was Chris's. This revelation could have destroyed everything. But Rachel, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity. Instead of letting the pregnancy unravel her carefully laid plans, she turned it to her advantage. She convinced David that the baby was his, and his excitement at the thought of becoming a father only deepened his love for her. Every time he placed his hand on her growing belly, believing it was their child, Rachel felt a surge of satisfaction. Her plan was working perfectly. But Chris knew the truth, and it gnawed at him. The thought of his child being raised by his brother, the man who trusted him more than anyone, filled him with guilt and despair. He struggled to keep the secret, especially as the wedding day drew closer. Chris loved Rachel, but he also loved his brother. The affair, once thrilling and secretive, now felt like a ticking time bomb. The wedding day arrived, and everything seemed perfect. Guests filled the venue, laughing and celebrating the union of David and Rachel. The atmosphere was filled with joy, and David was radiating happiness, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. But amidst the celebration, Chris stood apart, his heart heavy with the weight of his secret. He watched as his brother, so full of love and excitement, embraced the future with Rachel. Chris knew that the child Rachel carried was his, but how could he reveal the truth now? It would destroy everything. His love for Rachel, his loyalty to his brother, and his own desires were tearing him apart. As David and Rachel exchanged vows and rings, sealing their union, Chris felt the walls closing in. He tried to push his feelings aside, but the guilt was overwhelming. Every smile between David and Rachel was like a dagger in his heart, a reminder of the lie that bound them together. As the wedding festivities continued, Rachel excused herself, leaving David to enjoy the company of their guests. She needed a moment of peace, a break from the pressure of maintaining her perfect facade. But she knew that Chris wouldn't let the day end without confronting her. Later that night, Chris approached her hotel room, his heart pounding with the weight of what he needed to say. When she opened the door, the confrontation erupted. Chris demanded to know what they were going to do. What would happen to their child? How could they keep living this lie? Rachel, always composed, tried to maintain control. She reminded Chris that the marriage was her ticket to stability, that she had married David for the life he could provide, not out of love. But Chris wasn't satisfied with her answers. His guilt and anger had reached a breaking point. Unbeknownst to them, David had overheard the conversation. After seeing off the last of the guests, he had gone to find his bride. But as he neared the door, he heard raised voices. The words he overheard shattered his world. Chris was asking about their child, the child David believed was his. Rachel was admitting that her marriage to David was built on lies, that it was never about love. The betrayal hit David like a punch to the gut. The woman he loved and the brother he trusted had been lying to him all along. Everything he believed about his life, his marriage, and his future was a lie. David's mind raced as the truth sank in. His brother and his wife had betrayed him in the worst possible way. The child he had been so excited for wasn't his. The love he thought he shared with Rachel was a facade. His world had collapsed, and the rage boiling inside him was uncontrollable. In a fit of anger and heartbreak, David confronted them. The argument quickly escalated, emotions running high, words cutting like knives. And then, in a moment of impulsive rage, tragedy struck. David lunged at Chris, and what started as a heated confrontation turned into something far worse. Chris fell, his body crumpling to the floor. The room fell silent, the weight of what had just happened hanging heavy in the air. Rachel's scream pierced the silence as she rushed to Chris's side, but it was too late. The damage was done. Chris was gone, and there was no going back. What was supposed to be a day of joy had turned into a night of horror. The wedding that everyone thought would be the perfect celebration of love had ended in tragedy. David stood frozen, his mind numb with the realization of what he had done. The consequences of the lies, the betrayal, and the deception had led to this, a moment that would haunt them all forever. Rachel, once the master of control, was left with nothing. The future she had worked so hard to secure was gone, shattered in an instant. David, the man she had deceived, was broken beyond repair, and the brother she had used was gone. In the wake of the tragedy, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The joyous occasion turned into chaos as paramedics were called to the scene. But despite their efforts, Chris was pronounced dead. The authorities quickly arrived, launching an investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death. David, consumed by grief and guilt, found himself at the center of a homicide investigation. The police took statements from witnesses, including guests who had seen the confrontation unfold. Rachel, meanwhile, was torn between her own grief and the weight of her lies. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the situation was far more complicated than anyone could have anticipated. The truth about Rachel's affair with Chris began to surface, and it painted a grim picture of betrayal and manipulation. David, once the unsuspecting husband, was now a suspect in the eyes of the law. Days turned into weeks, and as the investigation continued, David was charged with manslaughter. The case attracted media attention, drawing in the community and sparking debates about love, betrayal, and the consequences of one tragic moment. The trial was emotionally charged. As evidence was presented, the courtroom became a battleground for the opposing sides. Rachel took the stand, her heart heavy with the weight of her decisions. She recounted the events leading up to the tragedy, her voice breaking as she spoke about her love for both men and the chaos that ensued. David's defense team argued that he acted in a moment of passion, overwhelmed by the realization of betrayal. They painted a picture of a man pushed to the brink, while the prosecution highlighted the premeditated nature of the confrontation. After days of tense deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. David was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, a decision that shattered him. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison, a punishment that felt like a life sentence. He would spend the next several years grappling with the consequences of that fateful night, a night that had turned his life upside down. Rachel, left to pick up the pieces, faced her own struggles. The community that had once celebrated her wedding now looked at her with judgment and disdain. She found herself grappling with guilt and remorse, understanding that her choices had led to irreversible consequences. This story is a haunting reminder of how fragile trust can be, how easily lies can spiral out of control, and how devastating the consequences can be. The story of David, Rachel, and Chris is a testament to the destructive power of betrayal and deception. In the end, the truth always comes out, and when it does, the damage it leaves behind can be irreparable. So, what would you do if your world was built on a lie? And at what cost would you keep that secret? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure to check out our other videos for more captivating stories. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.